Hello and welcome to the HAXTONKNITS channel. My name's Deanna. I'm a master knitter living in Okinawa, Japan, but not this week. Guys, this week, check it out. That is Mount Fuji. I am here this week to tackle Mount Fuji. I'm in the Fuji Yoshida area and it is gorgeous here. Definitely worth a visit. And of course, while I'm up on the mainland, I have to do some yarn shopping. So I'll be taking a trip into Tokyo to visit some of my favorite yarn shops. We're going to Keito, Puppy, and Walnut, the home of the Amirisu Yarn Club and the Amirisu magazine. Let's get started, guys. All right, guys, I know you are here for the knitting, so that's what I'm going to start with. I'm going to talk to you about my experience knitting in Tokyo. Siri is going to climb Mount Fuji with me later, so stay tuned later in the episode for all of those details. But first of all, this is yarn shopping in Tokyo. Let's get started. I did in fact climb Mount Fuji, but of course that also means that I was up near Tokyo and I took advantage of my trip to go and buy some yarn in some of the many cute, adorable local yarn shops available up in Tokyo. As you know, where I live here in Okinawa, the local yarn shop scene is a little sparse. We have some nice chain stores like Pandora House and Tokai Craft Heart and Rainbow House, but none of those kind of local yarn shops. You know what I'm talking about if you're a little bit of a yarn snob like I tend to be. So we're gonna start things off with the yarn because I know that's what you guys are here for, but stay tuned at the very end and I'll tell you all about my climb up Mount Fuji and some of the other sights that I saw while I was up in mainland Japan. Right off the bat, my very first stop, as soon as I got to the airport, I was plugging into my GPS directions to get to the yarn shop Keito. Keito is a beautiful yarn shop located in the Asakusabashi neighborhood, and compared to some of the other places I visited during this trip, this neighborhood really felt like kind of a quiet, friendly neighborhood. I parked at a parking meter and walked on foot to the shop. I actually had to circle the block twice even on foot because I missed the turnoff for where I was going. If you've never been to Japan, a lot of the roads, especially in the neighborhoods, feel very small. In the US, I would call them an alley, but no, full-size roads. So I thought, you know, no, it's got to be on the main road and not on this side alley, but I was wrong. It is kind of tucked into a little alley. But if you are going there, highly recommend. The store was adorable. It was so cute. I immediately was taking pictures and like sweeping shots of the place. They had a lot of yarn that I was familiar with. I saw some Brooklyn tweed in there and oh, this huge display of Jameson Shetland Spindrift. I almost just like blew my whole budget right then and there because I love me some Shetland Spindrift, but alas, I have quite a bit of it here in my own stash. I had no project in mind for it, and my ultimate goal was to get some local yarn. So I persevered. I followed my yarn diet a little bit. Let me show you my purchases from this shop. So the first one, I believe, is produced by the shop. So there, it actually says Keito as the brand on it, but this is Hot Ray. Hot Ray is sock yarn, and you can definitely see the Keito logo right there on the bottom. It is 80% acrylic, 15% nylon, 5% wool. So beautiful. I love this like kind of dusty yellow, and this is a very blue gray. It's not really showing as blue as it is here on camera today, but I am looking forward to making some socks with this yarn. That sort of you know, got me over the hump of finding my first little bit of local yarn that I have never experienced before, and this stuff is really soft. I'll be interested to see. It doesn't feel very stretchy or elastic, so I'll be interested to see how this works if I knit it up into socks. But this is actually what I'm most excited about from this shop. So there were a lot of there was a lot of crochet cotton. There were a lot of cones of recycled cotton, but these guys caught my eye right away. So the yarn, it's Serrato Watanoa. and it's Great Grandpa's Indigo Dyeing. Genuine, made in Japan. It's made from cotton and then it's indigo dyed. And of course I got two colors. This is a sort of traditional denim and a dark denim color is what I would call them. Indigo on cotton, right? It's denim. What am I gonna make with these? So 100% recycled cotton. I think I'm gonna weave these into some hand towels. There is a traditional sort of style of weaving here in Okinawa that you see in a lot of the traditional clothing, and I'm going to see if I can kind of mimic that. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. You know that weaving is my secondary craft. It's not my primary skill, so we'll see how that goes. So those were my purchases day one, right off the airplane. Stop number 2 for me was not in Tokyo. So as you guys know, I went and climbed Mount Fuji. The day after I climbed Mount Fuji, I was kind of in recovery. You know, the feet were a little bruised and a little sore, and I didn't really want to do too much. So I did spend most of that second day just kind of hanging out at the coffee shop and knitting. But in Fuji Yoshida, there is a larger version of the Tokai craft heart that I have available here. And since I wasn't doing anything major that day, I figured, what the heck, let's go in. And of course, this store was big compared to the one here in Okinawa. And I did end up making some more sort of splurgy purchases. I'm looking at them over here. The first thing I got, Wister. Wister brand is a Japanese brand I've talked about before. That's kind of a big box brand. So that's all of the stuff at the Tokai craft heart is that. But I got these guys here. So these are mohair by Wister. And what are they? I think they're 60% acrylic and 40% mohair. And I should have gotten one more, I think. But I've actually never worked with mohair. I've spun a little bit of it, but I've never worked with pre-made mohair yarn. And I'm surprised how much I like it. It's already fluffy and fuzzy, but it's very, very soft. And I thought it would make a really nice maybe colorwork hat or like a Christmas stocking or something like that. So that will be future project. Also there, I bought, oh my gosh, this stuff. This is Wister #Air. I don't know. I couldn't actually find this guy on Ravelry, but it is just big, fluffy, fluffy, fluffy. They had some scarves knit up out of this, and it's actually kind of cool if you scan. I'm not going to hold it up for you guys. Well, maybe I can. It's free. If you scan the QC code on the label, they link you to a free copy of the pattern. Of course, it's in Japanese and it's just for a simple ribbed scarf, but I thought that was kind of neat. I am actually planning on making sort of a giant loose gauge, loosely knit pullover. And so I got a bunch of colors. This is going to be my main color, this dark charcoal brown, and then I thought with the lighter gray, dark charcoal gray, I thought with the lighter gray and this sort of baby pink, I might do some just simple diamond color work for like the yoke of it. So that's my plan. I've got a bunch of these. I'm not gonna hold them all up. Oh, so fluffy. Took up so much space in my baggage. But yes, so yarn shop number 3. The next day, I, feeling much recovered after my Mount Fuji climb, went ahead and drove into Tokyo to do my sort of major yarn crawl of this vacation. I'm kind of torn about driving in Tokyo. I was very nervous about it. I thought like it was going to be very difficult. I was going to be overwhelmed, and the driving was actually fine. Now, I did grow up in a big city. I grew up in Tampa, so driving in Tokyo felt like driving in downtown Tampa, but it just goes on forever. Like you're always in it. So it wasn't that bad. The big thing was the cost. It's very, very expensive. All of the highways are expensive. And I was there during the Olympics. And even though they weren't allowing spectators at the Olympics, they had jacked up the prices. So the highways were all like 1,000 yen more, about $10 more than they normally would be. And so for me, a round trip from Fuji Yoshida to Tokyo and back cost almost $100. That was ridiculous. I wasn't prepared for that. I did spend some time looking at public transit thinking maybe I would take the train or something in, but it would have ended up being like 2.5 hours each way of transit time, and I had already rented the car. I said, all right, let's do it. So I'm torn on renting a car when you're making a trip like this, but I will say that it wasn't as bad to drive around in Tokyo as I was expecting it to be. I did figure out how to work the paid parking and all of that without any problem. So my next yarn shop I stopped at was Puppy Yarn, and Puppy Yarn is in Setagaya City. And if you have never been to Tokyo, this neighborhood was so cool. There were tons and tons and tons of restaurants and cafes, thrift stores, vintage shops. Oddly enough, all the vintage shops were selling like American 1980s band t-shirts. So I'm feeling a little old that I'm vintage now, but it was just a really cool neighborhood. I would highly recommend coming hungry to this neighborhood. I did stop and eat and have my sort of breakfast / lunch there. And okay, Puppy Yarn. Puppy Yarn is just an adorable shop. It is right outside the train station, so it should be easy to reach if you are staying in Tokyo. My favorite thing about Puppy Yarn is that right smack in the middle of the store is this communal table for sitting and knitting, and it was full of people and bustling. I just love that. I love a place where you can sit and knit and chat and all of those things. Primarily, it seemed like they stocked Rowan brand yarn. They had tons of Rowan, everything Rowan you could possibly think of. And I saw like the Kid Silk Haze and their like soft yak and just lots of stuff. Beautiful, beautiful store. I did buy some Rowan yarn. So this is the soft yak DK in my favorite color, which is this sort of olive green, olive drab. I wear this color a lot. And I also bought Cotton Yak Concept by Katia while I was there in this beautiful mustard yellow. I kind of have like a trend here. I do a lot of like yellow and neutrals in my life. Beautiful. They had a hat up for display with this, so I think these might become a hat later. These two yarns are incredibly similar if you haven't worked with them. They are both like similar in weights. The Rowan Cotton Yak DK is a slightly heavier gauge than the Concept Cotton Yak by Katia, but they're both like chainette plied. They both feel very similar. I will say that the Katia brand feels softer to me. I'm actually like, I really like this yarn a lot. But again, always on the quest for yarn that is local, and I've already started knitting with this one. Let's check these guys out. So this is another yarn that I had a hard time finding on Ravelry. I didn't find it on Ravelry. I found some of the other Puppy brand yarns. So again, this is Puppy. It's got the label for the shop right on it. It says it's made in Japan. This is, Lincanto number 5 recycled yarn. And I would love to know more about this recycled yarn. We'll have to dig around and see what I can find. It is 100% wool and it's soft, very, very soft. I'm assuming it's been pretty heavily superwash treated. It just doesn't feel much like wool. It feels very, very, very soft. I would have guessed there was some acrylic content in it, but I have already cast on and started knitting with this guy. So this is a work in progress. Let's see if I can show you it better. So this is what I have so far. This is a 2-color brioche hat. It's got a folded brim, which is done in ribbing, and then this lovely sort of highway of kind of double knitting up the middle of it. I am totally in love with the way it's turning out. Can't wait to get it off the needles. Hopefully someday soon I'll live somewhere where it's cold enough to wear a wool knit hat again, but highly recommend Highway Hat by Jonathan Tallow. All right, let's see what else I got into. So after shopping at Puppy Yarn, I moved on to walking around the neighborhood. I'll show you lots of shots here. I stopped at a burger joint, which is funny. I always go to Tokyo and end up getting burgers and stuff like that instead of Japanese food. I did manage to eat some good Japanese food later in my trip, but this day the burger place was just calling to me. So delicious, delicious food, cute neighborhood, definitely worth a visit if you are staying in Tokyo. Honestly, I wouldn't mind staying in that neighborhood. It was kind of cool. All right, so the last yarn shop of my trip, I went to Walnut. And guys, do you know what this store is? This is the home of Amirisu, right? I know you know this store because I talk about it all the time. I took part in their yarn club earlier, I guess this was last year now, and that's when I really fell in love with all the yarn from Life in the Long Grass and Mominoki and oh gosh, so much yarn. Anyway, one of my viewers very kindly pointed out that the most recent issue of the Amirisu magazine featured Okinawa. So when I was there, I was definitely on the lookout. This is published in both English and Japanese. And of course, it is just beautiful, beautiful pictures. This is such a stunning book. And beautiful pictures. So everything about Okinawa really in this book is about the weaving and the dyeing. And of course at the end they list all of the craft places in Okinawa that you have to visit. So I have a whole new list of places I want to go and check out. While I was there, I really just splurged a bit, bought lots of yarn. There were a lot of well-known brands there. I saw Brooklyn Tweed, I saw Woolfolk, I saw Mayak. There were bags by Hohi Locatelli. So many things, but they also make their own brand, their own sort of strain. But there's also the Amirisu brand yarn, and I was really excited to buy some of those yarns. So let me show you what I got. Oh, I bought a lot of yellow on this trip. Look at this. This is beautiful. So this is Parade yarn by Amirisu. Festive Natural Blend. All right, what is this guy? This guy is fingering weight, 60% wool, 20% cotton, 10% silk, 10% linen. And I think it is going to be stunning, and I actually have a project in mind. So I actually have a pattern in mind for this yarn. I was good this time. I only bought stuff that I could think of a project for the most part. So this is destined to be the olive leaf pullover by Ririko. If you have never seen any of her work, it's just a beautiful fingering weight sweater with some nice, I'm not sure if they're real cables or faux cable details on the sleeves and on the front. I am very much looking forward to knitting that pattern. But wait, I bought more. So when we were doing the Amirisu Yarn Club, I absolutely fell in love with the yarn by Mominoki. So I bought more. Oh my gosh. Okay, here you go. So this is Mominoki Thin Wool in the color Cinnamon. So I actually had these two skeins at home already, and I just bought these to contrast and go with it, and I have a pattern in mind for this too. So I think this is going to be the Suolaulu sweater. Oh, I bet I said that wrong. This is by Jenna K, and it's just a beautiful stranded colorwork sweater with sort of a floral or leaf motif. I think I'm going to make a short sleeve version of this, but I think that's what this yarn is destined to be. And man, while I was there, I got to squish some of the other yarn by Mominoki. They have, if you haven't seen the previous episodes where I talk about this, Mominoki is a brand. It's actually based in Germany, but I think the dyer, the curator of the line is originally from Japan. They have a, I think it was called German Merino Light, and it was the biggest, squishiest skein of yarn I've ever seen. I swear they were like double the size of these and just as squishy and lovely as you could possibly get. It was everything I could do not to buy more of that yarn, but I didn't have a plan for it, so I was good. The Walnut shop is in the Minato City area of Tokyo, and this area feels a little more upscale. There were definitely some big brand fashion lines around the neighborhood. I took the opportunity to sit down and drink some tea. I found this lovely little kind of tucked away area called the Farmer's Market, where there were just a little conglomeration of shops, and I was able to sit down and have a drink and peruse my new knitting. So that was just a lovely stop where I was able to sit, have a drink, and, you know, admire all of my new yarn purchases. Oh gosh, so while I was at Walnut, I think, do you guys remember just before this trip I said that I wanted to take one of my projects with me, but I was a little nervous about it because it was a big project and I didn't have any of the highlighter tape to keep track of where I was in my chart? Well, the shop owner at Walnut kindly suggested to just use some washi tape. I'm in Japan, like the land of the washi tape, and somehow this never occurred to me. But thankfully, she pointed me to a craft shop that was right around the corner, and I was able to purchase just a nice little thing of washi tape. Plus, check this out. It's a little holder that you wrap around it, and then its butt is how you cut your tape. And this is brilliant. I have been keeping track of my project just fine ever since then. It was working way better than my old method, which was using post-it notes, which you can see my post-it notes here. Yeah, so guys, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me last week that I could have just been using washi tape because it works better than post-it notes? So that was all of my yarn shopping. I will, of course, put in lots and lots of pictures. I will link all of the yarns in my Ravelry page. I'm actually really good at that. So if you want to go over to Ravelry and check out HAXTONKNITS, my personal page, I keep my stash up to date with everything I have if you're interested in checking out those yarns. So just a couple of more knitting updates before I move on to my Mount Fuji climb experience. I did take my Orenburg warm shawl project with me on this trip, so got quite a bit of knitting done with this. Gosh, I was really hoping, because I'm working from a giant cone of yarn, that I would be able to make each of these panels without having to join any joins, but I did not pay attention for just a second, and my littlest kitten snipped a bite right in my working yarn. And then when I was traveling, at some point I dropped a stitch. So I will have to fix this stitch and mend this up, but I did get quite a bit of progress. I think the last time I showed you, I was at, where's my progress keeper? This one. So made some progress on this project. It's going to be a long-term project, I think. While I was at Puppy Yarn, I bought some Japanese knitting needles. So if you don't know, there is a size of Japanese knitting needles. It's got its own chart, kind of like the US size versus millimeters. So it's actually kind of neat. If you ever have trouble making gauge, or you find you're consistently not the right gauge, or you're between sizes on your gauge, maybe try some Japanese needles, because it sounds like they come in slightly different sizes than the US needles do. So this is Nita metal knitting needles. Actually, these are by Tulip, but it looks like it's a Japanese brand. So it shows that like a 2 millimeter needle, they actually like what's typically a 2.1 millimeter. You know what, let me just show you this chart and see if you can figure it out. So Japanese size knitting needles, that's what's listed in the middle here. A lot of times they are just slightly off. They're not quite the same as US sizes. And you may be able to find like a 2.1 millimeter versus a 2.0 millimeter or something like that. But these have been lovely to work with. Cable's a little bit stiff, but these held me over so I could get knitting done while I was traveling. All right, last but not least, I'm starting to wander at this point. Of course, right before I left, this guy came in the mail. You guys remember from my episode on Bohas knitting, I was talking about this. This is Poems of Color, Knitting in the Bohas Tradition. I'm super looking forward to digging into this book. It is a used library book, which makes me happy. Tacoma Public Library. Thank you for selling off your books. I look forward to reading this, and I'm definitely thinking about casting on a bohus style sweater or hat. If you're watching the Fruity Knitting podcast right now, if their patrons have discounts to the Angora Garnet shop where she sells kits of fruity knitting stuff. So they, if you don't know that channel, Andrea and Andrew make this beautiful, beautiful channel. Unfortunately, Andrew just recently passed away, and Andrea's daughter has been helping her on the channel, which is terribly sad, but they are doing an excellent job. In fact, every time I put up a video about some sort of tradition of knitting or something informative, I just think, man, they do it so much better over on Fruity Knitting that I almost don't even want to bother putting out content. So definitely go over there, check out that channel if you haven't already, and become a patron of theirs, and then you can get some discounts on all sorts of stuff. It seems like almost every single episode they have discounts on various things for their patrons, but definitely we'll be checking out that Angora Garnet website for knitting kits for some of these patterns. That is it for the knitting content. Next, I'm just gonna blather a little bit about my climb of Mount Fuji and my time traveling up on mainland Japan. So some of you know I've lived in Japan about 6 years now, but it was divided. I originally was here for 4 years. I left, went and lived in Alaska for a while, and now I've been back here for about 2 years. And when I left last time, I was really upset that I did not go and climb Mount Fuji. It was a goal. It was something that I definitely wanted to do. Last year here, I ended up leaving much sooner than I expected, kind of a short notice turnaround. And I always regretted that I never went to climb Mount Fuji. So this time around, I had to get it done. If you don't know this, Mount Fuji is the tallest mountain in Japan, and it's got a very short climbing season because of the snow up at the top. So you kind of have to wait for the summer months. There's like 2.5 month period where it's the official climbing season and you can really get up and climb it. For those of you interested in climbing it, it really wasn't that terrible. It was, I mean, there's nothing technical about the hike. It's a very well groomed path. It's really just uphill hiking. There's no point where you have to like climb, you know, at some points it's steep and you may want to put your hands down to help yourself, but I never felt in danger, and it's a very heavily populated trail, so you're not going to be alone up there, and there are, of course, stations along the way. So there's stations, most people start at the 5th station and hike up. In each of those stations, they have water, food, rain gear. You can book lodging to sleep on the mountain in little mountain huts. There are toilets. So it's a very friendly mountain for people who want to climb it. Initially, I thought I was gonna make a video like how to climb Mount Fuji in one day, because a lot of people don't. A lot of people will climb up partway and then sleep in one of those huts and then climb up the rest of the way. A lot of times this is done to try to catch the sunrise, which I think is risky. The weather is unpredictable, so planning your hike and hiking in the dark with the hopes that in the morning you wake up and you just happen to have good weather, to me that sounds risky. What I did instead was I chose to stay near Mount Fuji. I stayed in Fuji Yoshida. I stayed right next to the Fujisan station, which is one of the stations where you can catch a bus. It's about an hour bus ride into the protected Fuji area. So during the official climbing season, you can't drive your own car up to the 5th station. You have to take a bus or something like that. And what I did was I booked several days in that area, and then I had the ability to pick the best day to hike. So initially when I was planning my hike, it looked like maybe my 3rd or 4th day, it was going to be the day when the weather was clearest. But as time got closer and closer, when I actually arrived in Tokyo, I checked the weather, and it was the next day that turned out to be the only day where they weren't projecting rain or thunderstorms on the mountain. So I was able to climb on a day that was stunning. Okay, the weather was perfect. I was climbing in like your base layer. I had like Under Armour and leggings, and then in my bag I had a warm layer and a rain layer, and I didn't end up needing any of those. It was just beautiful. The clouds were in and out, which provided some shade from the sun, and it was pretty warm and comfortable for the whole hike up. I caught the very first bus, so at 6:20 in the morning you can get on the bus at the Fuji-san station. This is earlier than the bus station actually opens, so you'll actually purchase your ticket on the bus when the bus arrives. That was something that was stressing me out as I got there, and there was nowhere to buy a ticket. But no big deal. Got on the bus, purchased my ticket, went straight there, and started my climb up the mountain. Everyone recommends that you start at the 5th station and kind of hang out at the 5th station for a little bit just to get used to the altitude. I guess what most people have a hard time with is the altitude during the hike. I did just kind of plan on eating breakfast there. There wasn't actually a lot of things open. As soon as I arrived, the stores were just starting to open, and there was just kind of like souvenir shops, so I was able to grab some snacks and of course the obligatory Mount Fuji walking stick. If you don't know about this guy, you purchase the stick, and then at each of the stations they will burn a stamp into the stick to mark your journey up the mountain, and up at the top you get your finisher stamp in red. Oh, this ended up being an expensive walking stick, but it's so cool and I really love it. I will show you pictures of that. My brother's actually working on making me some decorative like wall hanging so I can hang it on the wall. Maybe not in this house with my cement walls, maybe my next house, we'll see. Spoiler alert, HAXTONKNITS may not be HAXTONKNITS from Okinawa for very much longer. I think I have about a year left here and I'll be moving on to somewhere new. Spoilers, I don't know where I'll be yet. Anyway, climbing was great. I love that I climbed by myself and not with a group. It was a long hike and an exhausting hike, and I think if I had been with a tour group it would have just like ramped up my anxiety and made it that much worse. As far as altitude goes, I did purchase a can of like the oxygen, and I don't know for sure if I needed it. So at no point in the hike did I feel dizzy or have a headache or feel nauseous, but I did start using it. I thought, well, I bought it and I'm hauling it up the mountain, why not use it and see if it helps. So whenever I was feeling very, very fatigued or tired, I would take a few huffs from that. And it did, maybe it's just all in my head, but it did seem to help with my energy level as I went up the mountain, and maybe it prevented some altitude related issues. Not really sure, but I did finally make it to the top. Along the way, I passed a lot of people. Man, there was a woman who was 5 weeks postpartum and pumping at each of the stations, which made me feel very fat and out of shape. There was a 92-year-old man. He did proudly proclaim that he was 92 as I was like dying going up the side of the mountain. Man, it really was kind of a gut check about my own personal fitness and well-being. And maybe it's time to start working out a little bit harder. But alas, I did make it up to the top. It took me about 7 hours. So I do kind of wish that I had booked one of those mountain huts, not to see the sunrise, but because then I could have spent more time up at the top of Mount Fuji. So when I got to the top, there was a temple there where, the monks would actually give you your final finishing stamp. And there was also like food. You could get really expensive soba. There was of course it's a volcano, so you can see the volcano crater. And if you want, you can hike around the crater, which at that point, there's no way. I was too tired. But I really had to hustle to get back down the mountain. Otherwise, I would miss my bus. And if you don't know this, because it's the official climbing season and the road is closed to public traffic, if you miss the bus, you gotta stay. So I did not want to miss my bus. I wanted to quickly get down the mountain. It took me about 3.5 hours to get back down the mountain. Do I regret it enough that I will go back and do it again and stay in one of those huts? No, I think I'm done. I climbed it once and that is enough for me. So if you are staying in the Fuji Yoshida area, here are my recommendations. Where I stayed at Fujisan Station was kind of an older neighborhood. There was food and drink available, but less than the Kawaguchi Station. There seemed to be more food and more traveler amenities there. But also the Kawaguchi Lake area was really, really pretty. They had a beautiful walking trail that went all the way around the lake with a great view of Mount Fuji, and it really felt like a mountain retreat town. There was lots of ice cream parlors and, you know, little stores and things like that. So stunning area. I would recommend staying along the lakeside if you could, or somewhere like that. There are lots of onsens available there too that I think would be really nice to stay at. I think that it would be a little challenging to do it without a car if you're staying in that area, just because it is a little bit of a more rural area. Otherwise, you can do the more traditional route, which would be book your trip, stay in Tokyo, and then take one of the early morning trains or buses from Shinjuku Station to Mount Fuji. And then those, usually you climb up and then spend the night in the hut. As I was finishing, there were a lot of climbers that were coming in, and they were kind of just staying at this rest area waiting for the time to pass a little bit so that they could climb up and see the sunrise. So these guys did the same thing as I did, where they climb all the way up and all the way back down, but they start the climb in the middle of the night or in the late evening so they can see the sunrise at the top, and then they have plenty of time to get back down. That probably would have been a good option too. While I was in Fuji Yoshida, I of course did lots of eating. One of my favorite foods is okonomiyaki, and I found this great place where they bring the ingredients to you and you cook your own okonomiyaki on the grill in front of you. It was delicious. I was traveling by myself, so it was a little bit strange eating in the restaurant by myself, but I will deal with that for okonomiyaki. If you don't know what this is, I think it translates to like all the things you like grilled. So it's basically just a mishmash of ingredients. They're basically savory pancakes. So it's a mixture of cabbage and onion. There's yam flour. There's like the tempura flakes to give it like some fluff. But you mix all that together and you cook it. A lot of times it'll be topped with pork. And then this beautiful okonomiyaki sauce and Japanese mayonnaise, and then seaweed flakes and fish flakes. Oh, I love my favorite food. I've been making it at home this week just because eating there ignited my love of that food. Oh man. Also, while I was there, I was at it was kind of a chain restaurant, a Japanese chain restaurant. I picked it solely because it had a parking lot and it had touch screen ordering, so I can just touch and order what I want and I don't have to deal with language. It was slightly harder to get around up on mainland with limited Japanese, but at this point I'm pretty adept at Google Translate and navigating Japanese language places. But this restaurant had a robot. It was like a busboy robot. It looks like they were training it while I was there, but it will like go to the table and then return to its like home station where presumably someone will unload it and put everything into the dishwasher. But that was kind of cool. There was like me and one other American couple in that restaurant, and I remember us like looking at each other like, are you seeing this? When this robot came by. So overall, a beautiful trip. I'll put in lots of photos for you, and hopefully you enjoyed this. I'll see you guys next week. Bye. I'm staying at a sort of low budget. I'm not staying in a hostel, but a lower budget hotel. And at the moment, you can just see the outline of Mount Fuji. It's hiding in the clouds. I hope that's the right mountain. It's been behind the clouds the whole time, so I can't really say for sure, but I think that's it. Or maybe, oh shoot. Can you see just the little line there? Oh no, it may be more like up here. I was thinking it's like over here, but now that I'm seeing some of the mountain line, ooh, we'll see how far I get today. But Fuji Yoshida is outside of Tokyo. I would say it's about a 2-hour drive, or longer if you're taking the train or bus. And it's just a cute, quiet little nestled in the mountains. I say little, this is a pretty big town, but compared to the absolute metropolis of Tokyo, I'm getting some cute mountain town vibes. Alright guys, I'm here at the 5th station. It's about 7:20 in the morning. We'll see how well I do. I am very excited to be climbing. So for those of you who want to do Mount Fuji in one day, highly recommend staying close to the mountain. So either somewhere very close to Mount Fuji station, and then it's about an hour bus ride, so you're gonna want to catch the first bus up. So I call it the 6:20 bus. It's now about 7:20, and I'm excited to get started. How about a teeny tiny little cup of chai tea for $2, 200 yen. It's expensive. Oh my god. But it's really, really good. Now I am about 200 meters from the summit of Mount Fuji, and man, this was way harder than I expected, but so rewarding. I'm really glad I'm up here. Oh, take a look at this view. It's stunning. It's official, I'm at the top. This is the crater of Mount Fuji behind me here, which is insane. I am not going up there. I've done enough climbing for one day. But what a good day. taken me a really long time to get home. Oh, but it's worth it. Look at that. Alright guys, one last stop before we go. We are at the Shinshji temple here in Narita. It is definitely worth the stop. If you're flying in or out of Narita, make it your first or last stop. And of course, the best part about visiting this temple is just this street full of absolute shops, restaurants, souvenirs, and all of those things. I just got some goodies from a traditional Japanese snack shop. I actually have no idea what these are, so we'll find out. Take a look, guys. What do you think it is? Alright, let's see. It's warm and crunchy. It tastes like sesame. So there wasn't really anywhere to pull over and show you all my treats from that, but once you visit Shinshji Temple, definitely take a walk up and down the street. It is a mix of new and old. Definitely check out the traditional snack shops where you can see people making their snacks. And this street, it's all about the eel, okay? The eel is like everything. Every other shop is selling eel, but apparently this one shop is the place to be because there was a line out the door and you can watch them work. You see the old man, I don't know if he's like, there's a line out the door and you can watch them work. They are cutting up the eel, grilling them, sauteing them, whatever they do. And everyone was in line at this one store. I kind of felt bad because the store next to it, there was a very nice woman out front, like asking people to come in. Well, meanwhile, the store right next to hers, there's a line out the door. And I think it was just the show that you could see like the chef working and the big grills and just the mass amount of eel being produced. I intended to get lunch there, but you know, I just ate too many snacks. So along the way, I was picking up snacks everywhere I went. One of the traditional shops, they had something hot out front. It looked like it was gonna be sweet, which I should have known better because there's not that much sweet stuff here in Japan, but it had these guys. So these are crunchy and warm and they taste like sesame and they're delicious. I have no idea what they're called, but I bought some They were also selling something that I hold hope is sweet. There looks like there's sugar on there. Probably the same idea. I have so much snacks. Snacks is my love. I don't actually have any idea what this is, but it looks like fudge. It tastes like honey. So it was in a shop that was selling a whole bunch of black sesame stuff. So I'm guessing this is a sesame fudge. And they also had black sesame coated walnuts. Yeah, walnuts. So these are on the list to try. And anything else? Oh yeah, this, I don't know what this is. We'll open this another time and let you know how it is. It looks like it might be sweet. This might be plain snacks. I'm on my way back to the Narita airport and I am heading back to Okinawa.